Ethereal Shroud.
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. Other
Let
than the aforementioned computer issues, hopefully this one will go nice and smooth.
One can only hope so. So I assume that you can already predict what the most important question is.
To be honest, I've kind of stopped trying to predict anything, so I'm prepared for any question.
Prepared. Okay. So is Ethereal Shroud active now?
Yes, it is. I've been actively writing the new record that's upcoming, and I've had a lot of kind of progress with that. It's turning out to be a very different album in terms of kind of the focus, the sound, and things like that, because I don't particularly want to repeat Trisagion. So yes, hopefully you'll have new music from me before too long.
So that's how you spell Trisagion.
Yes, it's Greek, and I had to do a bunch of research on how to properly pronounce it. But
Yeah, it would be really awkward if you were the one mispronouncing it.
that would be really funny, and maybe that is actually true. Someone who's Greek in the audience might be able to correct me there. But as far as my research goes, Trisagion is correct.
We do
It's
have a Greek staffer. I
oh,
will
there we
have to
go.
ask him.
So I'm sure they'll be able to correct me and embarrass me in front of everybody. That would be funny.
That will be pretty funny. I can't wait. Because I'm asking, you had this short period where it seemed like yeah,
Trisagion, yeah, would be
Trisagion,
the last record.
yeah, would be the last record, and why did you feel that at that particular time?
I think the main the main impetus behind me kind of breaking everything up was just sheer exhaustion, and there was a lot of pressure behind that record that because I'd never done anything quite that ambitious before, and after I was finished with it and all of the stress that led up to making it, I just wanted it to be completely done. It was a very hasty decision at the end because I was done. I was just so exhausted with it that I thought, right, this is it. I'm not doing it. I'm not going through this again. But I suppose when you're in the kind of middle of that storm of stress and anxiety, it it's easy to feel like you'd never want to face that again. But then all of the positives come after of you creating such a piece of work that it makes you think, oh, I could probably do this again. It was definitely worth it, and I think that was the biggest reason as to why I thought let's keep this going.
Mm.
So it was I say it's just a very curious and stressful time, and I just didn't at that time I didn't want to go through with it again. But things have changed.
Right. So then I assume you said that you're already working on something new and you're taking it in sort of a new direction.
Yes, that's correct.
Good.
It's
Do not spoil the surprise then.
no, I won't spoil the surprise. I might kind of give hints in the. It's still Ethereal Shroud, but I wiped the slate clean after Trisagion was done. It was a different feeling from when I did They Became the Falling Ash, because with that record, I simply wanted to perfect what I'd already started. So, that Trisagion was very much for me the apex of that sound that I was going for. And I think that was probably another driving factor in just wanting to call it quits, because I felt like that's it. Like I'm not topping this one in terms of like stylistically at least. And if anything does come after it, will just have to be very different. But I suppose that there's a benefit to that is that I only really want to make music now to please myself, to kind of give myself that kind of artistic fulfillment. So despite the fact that what's coming after is different, it's given me more of a reason to continue as opposed to a reason to end it.
Right. So if it sounds like all the Ethereal Shroud will have to hold you accountable.
Well, when it's actually recorded, I might just think, "Oh crap, this sounds nothing like what I was doing before," and then you can only blame me.
I will. So I assume that's reassuring, knowing that there will be a new Ethereal Shroud out of the horizon. And I know
Eventually.
that there have been a lot of things in your life in the meantime between the Falling Ash and Trisagion.
Yes.
Trisagion. I keep thinking that the A is before the S for some
Say it
reason.
however you like, as long as I can understand what you're saying.
All
That's
right, I will misspell it every time in this interview. I will misspell all your band names. Do not worry.
Please do. It's
Please.
funny.
All right. So there's been this huge, large space, and in the meantime, how did you sort of look back upon what was already done with the project?
It made me think of it very differently and with a more of a sense of regret, because if I had the resources at that time, then I would have made the production and execution of They Became the Falling Ash far bigger, and far better and more what I had in mind, because it was an album of compromises. Because of my personal circumstances being so dire at the time, I was facing homelessness. I didn't really have any money, so whatever I recorded, it simply had to be that way.
And you do have money now.
Not really enough. Like, I've got enough, but otherwise, it was, at the time, I was really proud of what I made from such a humble from such humble gear. Like, my guitar was broken, so one of the strings was missing. I used a microphone that was actually built into a webcam, because that's all I had at the time. And I recorded some kind of field stuff with like cotton wool taped to it, which I thought was quite creative. But that's basically all I had to my name when I made that record. So going from that to Trisagion, which was, you know, amped in studio, properly mixed and mastered, nearly all live instrumentation, it was a very different feeling. And I suppose that's what I was going for, because I didn't want to repeat myself, you know, artistically. So making it in a totally different way than what I was used to was a lot more interesting to me. But it does make me look back with a bit of regret, because I think the material on that record is great, but it's just kind of hindered by the production side of things.
Well, isn't that the case with most music?
Well, I'm not so sure about that. Sometimes I think the production is what creates the record. And at the time, that's how I felt. Like, I thought that the character that I created with that record and its limitations were what created the atmosphere that it had. But it's hard for me not to feel like now that, oh, I wish I gave that album or the material more justice. But I'm proud of it all the same. It was absolutely a product of its time and the circumstances, and I'm proud of it for that.
Yeah, I mean, you have remastered it, I think, but that's only so much that you can do with remastering.
I mean, the thing is, I don't really know how to remaster either. I only wanted to kind of fix the really glaring issues, like the way that the vocals echoed from the reverb being so compressed. I wanted to fix that. And some other things where everything just sounded as if it was kind of in a tin can. I fixed that, but it's still not a great sounding record. It's still, you know, yeah, I'm not an audio engineer. That's the thing, and I wasn't then. I'm not now, and it made me realize how much I didn't know going into something like Trisagion.
Right. So it was more of a bug fix than an actual remaster.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, at some point, I would like to give it like a proper remastering job by someone who knows what they're doing. For
in 3 years, remember,
3 years.
3 years.
Yeah. In exactly, I'm going to wait 3 years now. I mean, in 3 years it'd be the 10-year anniversary, so maybe it would be
precisely.
Fitting. Yeah.
Or maybe you have to wait another year to do Absolution Emptiness.
I'm never ever touching that record again.
Why?
I fucking hate that record. I recorded it as a joke. It was a big in-joke between me and my friends making fun of depressive, suicidal black metal, and I recorded and wrote the whole thing in 5 days. I just didn't expect anyone to actually like it, and that's kind of weird to me now, because I look back on it and just think, this isn't good. Why are people into this?
Well, how does it feel knowing that you made something as a joke and people actually like it?
Really weird. I think people have gone a bit mad, because it's, the thing is, like, I was having an argument with my then partner about how I think that so much depressive, suicidal black metal is really low effort, and You know, it could
Yeah.
be good. Yeah, it could be good, but it's not, because no one actually pays attention to it. And they dared me. Like I said that I could do that in a week. I could write one of these records in a week. So they dared me to. Yes. So they dared me to do it. So, and in 5 days, Absolution Emptiness was real. It's why I was anonymous at the time and released anonymously, because I didn't really want to be associated with the joke. But then I started doing things for real, and here I am. Like, I hate depressive suicidal black metal, and it's kind of annoying that I keep getting lumped into it because of that fucking record. Really annoying.
You played yourself.
I played myself. So there we go. I'm never touching that record again. I'm never repressing that record. I hate it.
Well, maybe you'll feel differently in a year. It's the 10th anniversary.
10th anniversary, and I'll use that to convince everyone not to listen to it.
Right. So let's go back a bit to since we're going all the way back to Absolution Emptiness. Let's go even way further back. When was the first time like you listened to music and said, "This is what I want to do"?
Probably when I was 13. I discovered summoning through a really tiny ad in a Kerrang magazine when I was 12 or 13. I can't remember. It must have been 13. It was 2006.
But you were already getting Kerrang magazines.
Apparently so, yes. But ended up getting Oathbound by Summoning, and that's kind of changed the way that I listen to music. From before that, I didn't really understand the existence of more thoughtful, long-form, melodic music. I was just kind of this trendy kind of like goth kid who listened to Slipknot. But that was kind of...
Weren't we all?
Yes, weren't we all? I still listen to Cradle of Filth, even though I did back then. They're still great.
Okay, this interview is over.
No. They're great, shut up. But that changed how I saw and felt about music and what I wanted to create. And I was actively kind of writing melodies and riffs and things then. Like most of Astral Mariner, for example, was written then. Most of the melodies, the riffs and things like that, they were written then. I just didn't really have the... I want to say skill, but I didn't really attain it as a skill. I just kept throwing shit at the wall. But I didn't really have the skill to kind of put it all together in a cohesive package. So 15 years later, I finally recorded the song. But I would say that was the point. When I was about 13, listened to bands like Summoning. I liked other black metal bands as well. I liked Bursum at the time before I knew that the dude was a fascist. Now I don't touch anything he does. But at the time, it was quite inspirational to hear, again, long form, thoughtful, though not as thoughtful. I don't think it's as thoughtful now, but at the time, that's how I perceived it. And
yeah, I mean, everyone can remember what it's like listening to Philosophem for the first time.
Well, I'm gonna have to be the contrarian here and say I don't like Philosophem.
Well, most of it not, but the first two songs, like.
No, I don't like them. I think they're really, really basic and just compositionally a bit bland. I think the best...
That's black metal.
I can't believe I'm taking this time to talk about Bursum, but the best Bursum record for me was Hvislice at Taros. That was the record that really kind of spoke to me in a way that made me think, right, I want to make something that's melancholic. I want to make something that's melodic as well, but also very long form, cinematic. That wasn't cinematic, but that I knew that I wanted to create something bigger and vaster. I think Trisagion especially is the culmination of those 15 years of ambitions and songwriting. And I think They Became the Falling Ashes a bit of a test run. I love the material just as much, but it was the one where I was kind of testing the waters to try and find out what I want to achieve musically in my life.
Right. Plus, it's the latest album.
It is the latest album and the best one, in my humble opinion.
Every band ever will just answer that the best album is the latest one.
Yeah, that is actually true. So maybe in a few years...
I will not take your word for it. Absolution Emptiness is still the best one.
I hate you so much.
All right. So when did you actually start? Okay. No, before I ask this question, because I remember you were mentioning Summoning and all, and I remember having quite a similar moment, even though I haven't really started making music seriously. Yeah. I have done a lot of music unseriously. I will not show you. But I had sort of a similar moment actually when I was discovering the website that I'm writing for, because I was searching for best metal albums, whatever. I already knew that this is the music that I wanted to listen to, and in the top 10, there was a band that I had no idea who they were, and I figured what are they doing alongside Metallica and Megadeth and whatnot, and it was Agalof's The Mantle. And listening to those first few acoustic guitar moments, that was kind of a paradigm shift in how I perceive music. So
I can
both
see
them and
that. Yeah.
Summoning, kind of going into more long form music, something that feels more thoughtful. Obviously, it's a bit patronizing to say that they're thoughtful and Metallica are not thoughtful, but
I think that it's just more in a different way. Like
mhm.
the influences of bands like Agalloch, for example, they were listening to a lot of the early 90s death metal, a lot of prog rock. I mean, the main songwriter worships Rush, and that shows when you listen to their albums, especially The Mantle. It really does show. It's more of a prog rock record with some rasps in it, as far as I perceive that album. And then, of course, Summoning were really influenced by a lot of the kind of early
And Tolkien.
Tolkien, but like retrospectively, Dungeon Synth. It wasn't. I don't think it was called that then, but like the early 90s, those kind of games. But they were also influenced by industrial. What I'm trying to get at is that both of those bands had very, very strong ties in influences where commerce,
Outside of just metal.
yeah, as not only just outside of metal, but outside of any kind of commercial kind of commerciality. That's not to say that that's a bad thing. Commerciality is not a bad thing as far as I'm concerned. I mean, you listen to something like Metallica and things like that, and you know, when they were kind of engaging in more pop like structures in their music, I think that that's good, and I think that that is something that it's a skill, and it's not music that I could write. I would not be able to write that kind of music even if I tried. That's why I'm convinced that it's actually a skill. But yeah, when you're putting bands like that up against, say, Metallica, and bands like Agalloch against Metallica and things like that, there is as you said, a really big paradigm shift in what they were focusing on and what they wanted to get out of it. They wanted a really multifaceted, non-commercialized type of music, whereas bands like Metallica, they were aiming for something different.
At some point, yeah, they were kind of.
Yeah. I can't say that bands like Metallica were any kind of direct influence on me. I think, like, if you go through generations, I'm sure that the bands I listened to were influenced by Metallica, but they didn't really have a direct influence on me, just because I don't know, it just didn't really speak to me. Metallica didn't. But hey, I understand their place in history.
Right.
I understand their wide-ranging influence. I think Metallica were even an influence on bands like Agalloch in at least an indirect way. So yeah,
I can see that. Like, I can expect that "Fade to Black" is among John Hogan's favorite Metallica songs.
that doesn't surprise me.
Well, I'll have to ask John Hogan that, but he isn't responding to my emails.
What a shock. He is one pretentious dude from what I've seen and heard of him, and just, I don't know, not very, as far as I can tell, the whole anti-Semitic shit that he decided to do. I'm like, oh, God, you ruined it, man. You ruined Agalloch. Good job. It's a bit hyperbole there.
Yeah, but it was one thing, and it wasn't that bad. But
even still, like, the fact that you can make a joke like that means you probably have worse jokes at the back of your mind. You just happen to let one slip. It's just, oh man, come on, you knew better. Why are you doing this?
I'll have to ask him about that.
Yeah, let me know if you get a response.
Eventually.
In a few years, when when all other kind of avenues for him have dried up, I'm sure he might answer your email.
Right. I mean, he did come with quite a great record recently.
Did he?
Yeah.
How recently?
Last year or 2 years ago.
Oh, is it one of kind of like guitar ambient ones? the way
Yeah,
he's
but
messing around with guitar pedals.
mhm. Yeah, but the last one was a bit more compositionally ambitious, let's say, or not necessarily ambitious, but more
I know the
structured.
record you're talking about. I can't say I've listened to it. I don't know. I think in a band like Agalloch, it was a lot greater than the sum of its parts.
Right, because
And it
you
creates.
listen to what they've created since in all their other bands, like it's not the same.
Yeah, I mean, Karada I thought was fantastic, but again, greater than the sum of its parts. There were some immensely talented people in that band, and then you had to get the best out of each other. But Agalloch was the same, and when John Howe went his own way, the Pelorian record, which is decent but a bit one-dimensional. I don't know. Like I think that the individual in that band who had such an ear for like cinematic songwriting was clearly Don, because everything that he's been a part of has had that same kind of cinematic idea. And certainly with like then there's Jason, who understands textures really well and rhythm really well, and of course Aesop is a hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, but is a fantastic drummer in everything that he plays in. So again,
Right.
it was very much greater than the sum of its parts. So when those parts are segmented, it's just not there. It's not Agalloch, certainly. I unashamedly have an Agalloch tattoo, which is frustrating now that, you know, John's come out to be a bit of a twat. But there we go. What can you do?
What can you do? I mean, you could have had way worse.
Oh, that's certainly true.
I think both Corrada and I don't know if you've listened to the most recent sculptured one.
I gotta admit, I didn't like it.
Yeah, both of them I didn't like, most specifically for the production.
Yeah, Karada had very good production. But
I'll have to contradict you on that.
oh, okay. How do you feel about it?
So both of them, I kind of see them as very frustrating listens. It's like they're good. There is good music behind it, but it's like an ice cream that is behind the glass door.
Yeah, I
You can
can.
see it, but you cannot lick it. It teases you with the music, but you can't properly listen to it.
I think the Sculptured Records production was
Yeah, it's way worse.
abominable. Like, I
Right.
understand that it was kind of an artistic expression. They were doing it on purpose, but I just don't understand why you would make a record sound like it's in mono on purpose and not do any editing on the vocals. So every time he breathes in, it's so jarring. It's such a jarring record to listen to, and it just makes you think, what? And especially considering, again, like I've seen interviews with Don where he talks about all of his guitars he owns and how he loves tone. And like, if you love tone, produce it properly. What are you doing? But that I don't know, man. I do not understand that record. I think it's beyond me. I'm clearly not artistic enough for it, man. It's what it is.
Definitely, it's our fault.
It's our fault. It's my
Right.
problem, not the record.
Right. Yeah. Like we said, like I said, there's a lot of albums with great music, but the production really doesn't let you properly enjoy it. There are a lot of albums I've heard that are like that.
I've made one of those, so
Yeah.
yeah, I can feel
Absolute
that.
emptiness.
Oh, I hate you so much. Why did I agree to this? To be fair, though, actually, I mean, the production on that demo is god awful because I didn't put any effort into it. But that was kind of the point. It was to emulate that kind of low effort,
right,
DSBM kind of bullshit. That said, there's some decent riffs in the record. Like, like that comes through. There's some decent riffs there, but I didn't do anything with them that was interesting.
Definitely worth remastering.
No,
just for the riffs.
No, not gonna happen.
You know that for the riffs is the best excuse to do something.
Yeah, I suppose so. I've half considered just completely re-recording They Became the Falling Ash for that reason, but then I don't know. I'm conflicted about it because it's an album of its circumstances. You know, I take those circumstances away, it doesn't have the same character. I mean, it was a desolate.
New circumstances.
That's true, but at the time, it was a desolate record written by someone who was in dire straits. and just wanted to get something out there as urgently as possible because
You were in dire straits?
Oh yeah.
I love South Pole.
Yeah, not the band, but yes.
Oh. I was figuring out that it sounds a bit different.
Yeah, just a little bit. But because of the kind of dire circumstances that I was in, it was a case of I need to do this now or I'm not going to get the opportunity. Like my future just didn't feel like it had anything. So I felt like I have to record it now, otherwise it'll never exist. Which is why for 3 months I just kind of locked myself away and created it, despite not really having any experience in record other than what I've done anecdotally. Just zero experience in professionally recording anything. So it created this very singular record. Nothing else quite sounds like it. And on one hand, I'm proud of that, but at the same time, it's hard to look back on now, I think.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, we were going back and we were talking about how you first got into music. But what was the first time you recorded music?
When I was 13, I had a project that, unfortunately, everything was lost in the MySpace crash, where everything...
The
famous MySpace crash. But I had this kind of black metal project from back then. I think it was called Ica, which is Finnish for time. I think that's what it was called. And I recorded basically an album's worth of stuff, and it was god awful in terms of its production, like even worse, way worse. All I had was a guitar and a laptop that can't run anything, and that's what I recorded this kind of record on. And very influenced by the likes of Bursum. Funny story is I discovered Agalok by being compared to them as a rip-off of them. That's how I discovered them. So clearly I have this kind of similar kind of idea for songwriting as I did, even though when I was 13. So I think it brings it full circle now, because I think there are some moments on Trisagion that sound almost inadvertently, I didn't intend for it to happen, but sound very much like Agalok. But again, going back to this project, that shortly thereafter I did an ambient record, and then a little bit after that I did this kind of shoegazy doom project with the terrible name that nobody got the joke of, which is Of Solitude and Solemn. It makes it literally zero sense, and I was kind of like making haphazardly.
So you were making it ironically,
more or less, because like I'd come across so many kind of European bands with like nonsensical names or names that don't translate very well to English, and I kind of wanted to emulate that. My sense of humor was weird back then, and
as opposed to.
Thanks, man. But that was the source of that project, and I'm kind of resurrecting it next.
Okay, so that was in line.
Yeah,
because it's something like around that part, like 2012, 2014, you were coming out with a lot of records. Like you mentioned the Aludra one, these two Of Solitude and Solemn ones, your masterpiece Absolution Emptiness. All of these were coming out in a very, very short time, relatively.
Yeah, well, it was shortly after my father died, and I felt just that I had a lot more to say during that space of time. And I think language kind of fails you sometimes, especially when you're going through something like really profound. And that was kind of the impetus behind me writing more things in a short space of time. Plus, because I used to work with my father, I had a lot more time on my hands. I used to kind of, my day job was working with him, and that was kind of swept from under me. So it was a case of just having so much to say. And that's more or less what I was doing, just in the only way that I knew how at that time.
What kind of music did he like?
Everything I didn't. I think his favorite band was Fleetwood Mac. He really liked the Eagles. Basically dad rock. I'm gonna just say he had dad rock taste. So me kind of diverging from that into metal was something that he was very confused about, and he didn't understand it.
Well, of course, he had better taste.
Apparently so. But
I assume he liked Dire Straits too.
He probably did, yeah. To be fair, like he did like some prog rock, like Pink Floyd and Yes and Camel, which I really appreciate and still listen to actively. So we had a little bit of crossover. King Crimson was something he really enjoyed, and I ended up loving. But the funny thing is, he never really introduced me to that kind of music. I had to find it on my own, and then say, "Oh, I've been listening to King Crimson lately," and I just see the shock on his face, like, "What?" But yeah, there was a little crossover, but none really. I don't think anybody in my family is into the kind of same music as me. I really diverged from the norm.
Mm-hmm. So, for example, what does your mother think of your music?
To be fair, she listened to Trisagion and she loved it. But I think that was under the lens of, this is something that one of my family made. I think that if it weren't for that, and if it weren't for that kind of association, she wouldn't listen to it. She wouldn't actively listen to it. I mean, she is very much like a top 40 pop music listener, which again is fine. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. But I think it's just a different type of musical consumption, where it's more entertainment than it is something that's deeply artistically enriching. It sounds really pretentious, but
there is a difference, but it's hard to put it into words that don't sound condescending.
Yeah, but it's not condescending. It's the difference between somebody who actively watches movies and films to analyze them and be enriched by them and all the kind of nuances of it, and someone who just really likes Marvel movies. Like, it's neither is wrong. And it's just a case of what you personally get out of something. Right. And music's just my language. It's something that I find incredibly interesting, evocative. And from a very early age, I knew that I wanted to make music.
Mm-hmm.
I think
so then next time you create the next Ethereal Shroud record, don't tell her it's Ethereal Shroud. Tell her, oh, look at this band I found.
Oh, this is my friend's band. Like, what do you think? Like, and if she hates it, then I know I've probably done my job correctly.
Precisely.
Can't remember what. Yeah, I was gonna touch on something. Yeah, I think that my autism has something to do with the way that I deeply appreciate music, because it's outside of the kind of it's outside of the norm of how people would ordinarily communicate. I struggle with that. So being able to speak through something that's non-verbal is really helpful for me. So I think that has something to do with why I latched onto music so deeply.
Right. And why your sense of humor is so,
strange. Yeah.
Precisely.
Well, clearly nobody gets those kind of jokes, like the kind of jokes I was making, like making a record for a joke, band names as a joke. That was so deeply entrenched in context that nobody else would ever get it. So it's just.
I'm glad I get it now.
Yeah. I think if you look at like the song titles of that record and like listen very closely to the lyrics, you'll realize that I was not being serious. I think I screamed "Drop It Like It's Hot" in one of the songs. Yeah, track 3 near the end. Listen really carefully, and it's there.
So, which record one?
Absolution Emptiness. Track 3.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I screamed "Drop It Like It's Hot" because again, like I didn't expect anyone to listen to it. I really didn't. But as soon as I uploaded it to Bandcamp, all the Russian torrent sites got a hold of it, and it circulated. I'm like, what the hell is going on?
Russian torrent sites get it. It's
it's out there. And I think the most baffling thing is the fact that it got so much more attention than any of the serious music I had made before. And I'm like, oh, that's fucking great, that. Thanks. This makes me feel so much better about my kind of like serious artistic output. Great.
I'm certain you're not the only artist whose serious musical output is outshined by that one joke they did.
I'm fairly certain that that's true.
Right. I was watching a video about I don't really remember the name. I think it's Bobby McFerrin, the guy who did "Don't Worry, Be Happy."
Okay, yeah.
That's a joke song, obviously, and it outsold everything he did. But he's actually one of the most successful jazz vocalists
Are you
And
talking about the Todd in the Shadows video? Because I watched the same one.
right.
Yeah, yeah. It's really fascinating, and it's fascinating to see just how talented he is. And that song, it's got a lot more kind of talent and skill in it than you might think on a first listen, because when you realize it's all a cappella, I'm like, oh wow, okay. I did not realize that. But then when you look at some of his other performances, it's mind-blowing how skilled this guy is. I've never heard anything like it. But yeah, the song was a joke. But that's the thing that took off.
Right.
I'm only glad that my subsequent records each did better than the last one.
So far.
Because yeah. See you on the next record where it gets panned. But I'm glad there are some people that genuinely do prefer Absolution Emptiness to anything I did afterwards. And though that Bob, are you actually being serious? Or
No.
are you joking?
No, I haven't listened to that in a long time. Don't worry.
Though those people do exist, though, and though I find it bewildering, like genuinely bewildering, because I didn't put any thought into any of the sections. I just thought, oh, this might sound good after that. Oh, I'll just literally copy and paste the whole section and put it later on. So that's fine. Like, whatever. No one's going to listen to it. Whereas, obviously, there was just so much more thought in everything I did next. And I'm just glad that those people are in the minority. I'm grateful, of course, for the positive kind of feedback of anything I do. But to say that the joke record was better than one I spent like 6 years slaving over, nah. Sorry, not seeing it.
Right, but out of those 6 years, you said that there were 2 years where you didn't pick up the guitar at all because of.
That's correct.
Because yeah, I can expect there was a lot of anguish in those years.
There was. In saying that, there was. Just because I'm not picking up the guitar doesn't mean I'm not songwriting. It all kind of occurs in my head, and then I just have to contextualize it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was a really traumatic few years, and I think that played to the benefit of the record because I felt like I had so much to say in this hour and 4-minute journey, and I think because of that, it was just kind of oozing out of every orifice of the record. The kind of just the anguish, just everything that happened during those 6 years. I somehow found a way to put it into that record, and when I heard the record for the first time after it was mastered, I just sobbed like an idiot because it felt like that all of that anguish, I've turned it into something meaningful, and it was a really interesting experience to go through that. Not that I ever want to repeat it, and I think outside of that, it's going to be interesting to see what I'm recording next, because though I've written it, pretty much all of it, I've got 6 songs, so it's going to deviate from the formula of 3 songs. Yeah, I've got 6, and
yeah, it's closer to Absolution Emptiness then.
Apparently so. It's. I think it's going to be about the same kind of. When I've been doing rehearsals, it's about the same length as Trisagion was.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, I think the success of Lanterns, the song, kind of helped influence where I wanted to go next. Like having a more free-form structure rather than the kind of cinematic one I've been playing with. Something more free-form, something that's just shorter, more melodic. Is something that I really wanted to play with. And that's kind of the driving force behind the record. Just that idea of taking something and rather than making it this huge cinematic 28-minute piece, just kind of put it into something more freeform and something that's just more loose. I don't understand musical terminology, so I can only kind of explain it from more of an emotional standpoint of how it feels when I'm playing it.
So maybe you're thinking something that's less just a build up towards something.
Yes. Yeah, that's
where you're thinking this much ahead of where you want to go with what you're playing now.
Yeah, I mean, every single album I've ever written, I actually wrote back, apart from Absolution, because that was a joke. But everything I've kind of consciously written, I've wrote it backwards. I started from where I need to go and built a journey up to it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the first time I'm not doing that. It's more from start to finish, just a really kind of loose expression of a feeling. And it's going to be really fascinating to see how this kind of change in dynamic of where instead of how I normally write is going to serve Ethereal Shroud and kind of what I want to get out of it.
Yeah, this does remind me of another YouTube video I saw, but it was about storytelling. So what you're trying to do is becoming a gardener instead of an architect.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that's pretty fascinating. But yeah, just kind of, I can't really explain it any better than that, because that's exactly what I'm doing. And certainly the shift in focus is really going to be helpful for me, because I've got no interest in repeating Trisagion. If I aim for
if you want another one, just listen to it again.
Just listen to it again. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, there's so much depth to that record that I know people who'd listen to it at least 10 times. And then I point something out in there they never noticed, like how some riffs repeat themselves super subtly. It's really, really, really subtle, but you know, there's a continuity, and I'll point it out and they're like, oh shit.
It's a continuity error.
Apparently. So yeah, repeated listens are certainly some of the benefits Trisagion, but like if I keep going for the same things again, I'm not going to get the same enrichment. It would be so easy for me just to write another record exactly like Trisagion that sounds like Trisagion, and I'm sure people would love it. But that's just, what am I going to get out of that? And this is, well, yeah, money. I don't know. You're thinking that if you think that like Ethereal Shroud makes me money, you are very wrong. I mean, to be fair, like it did actually get me through like a period of unemployment during the pandemic. When Ethereal Shroud, when Trisagion came out, it was immensely helpful to get me through to March until I started a new job, and that was basically it. I'm not really making money from it at the moment. It was just.
But you're at least over zero.
I'm over zero, yes. And I think most importantly, I made the money back that it took to make the record, because the costs just kept on mounting up. Like I'd wake up one day and I'd have a message from the audio engineer saying, "Hey, we should do this, but it'll cost £250," and I'm like, oh, okay, let's do it. I'll go asking around for money, or works, like at the time it was kind of work some extra shifts, but it was really tough. I think it ended up costing around probably about £4,000 to make the record. So in euros, about 5,000 ish.
Mm-hmm. Imagine everything else you could have bought with that money.
Imagine, man. Imagine what I could have done with that money. Knowing me, I would have probably just wasted it. The thing is, like, I'm not really a gear kind of guy. So I only have one guitar and I only have one amp. I'm not really a great guitarist, and certainly I'm not. Clearly. The thing is, I'm not. I have really poor circulation and coordination with my hands. So as far as I'm concerned, as long as I can play what I write, then I'm quite satisfied. I'm not going to start shredding anytime soon. That's not going to be on an Ethereal Shroud record unless I get someone else into it. And I just don't want to. It's not. It would be less me if I did that. It would be a less of a personal expression, because the melody in those albums is, I think, what makes it Ethereal Shroud. It's a very specific type of melody, and I think it permeates through everything that I record. So even the joke record, yep. There are some genuinely decent riffs in that record, and that makes me sad. Like the very last song, "Lost in the Cold, Gone is the Light," which is, I can't remember what made me think of that song title, but that actually has some decent riffs, I must admit.
Yeah. Word to mastering?
Sorry?
Word to mastering?
No. Absolutely not.
Right.
I don't know. If you really like Absolution Emptiness, you're not going to want to remaster because you already really like it. And I'd just be wasting time on people that have come into Ethereal Shroud through Trisagion, and they're not going to get the same level of enrichment.
But I don't want your Absolution Emptiness to be remastered for me. I want you to go through remastering it.
Oh, thanks, man. Super appreciate it. Just make me suffer. To be fair, that is a good way to get an Ethereal Shroud record. Like, that's a good way to get an Ethereal Shroud record if the track record is to be believed, because it seems to come out of anguish.
Right.
So
I did want to comment on that a bit, because definitely you're not the first artist to put to make art that comes from pain or anguish or however else you want to call it. Uh, so do you think you'd be able to make this without the pain? I mean, you're certainly trying now.
I don't think I would have been able to make Trisagion. No, the raw inspiration to speak wouldn't have been there. As long as I'm speaking about something, as long as I'm making music about something that is profound, I think that's all you really need. You need a profound impetus to be able to create something that's got that element of depth. You can't emulate it. So the kind of pools I'm drawing from now, they're more along the lines of philosophy and things like that, the way that I kind of philosophically want to comprehend the world around me. And that is a profound feeling, but I wouldn't have been able to make Trisagion, not in any way, shape, or form. And it's both better and worse for it. There are some elements to Trisagion that, outside of the context of my own head, kind of don't make sense. Like the way that the lyrics in Chaos Morphias kind of jump from topic to topic to topic without much in the way of cohesion. But that made sense at the time. It came from a time where I was experiencing PTSD. So these constant shifts in focus, these constant kind of swings in mood and what would kind of simulate me, that made sense. And with that context, it does make sense. And it's why there's lots of jumps in the song, jumps in volume, like almost like jump scares in the song, simply because the dynamics just shift so constantly. I wanted to capture that moment. I wanted to capture those emotions. So again, it's better and worse for it, because you could argue it's a less cohesive song, but it's certainly more authentic for it. So
I mean, the world is certainly richer because of Trisagion, but I'm not certainly if it was richer despite what went into making it.
I mean, I couldn't really control the circumstances that led to it. All I could really do was try and make something from it.
Yeah, make it meaningful in some way.
Yeah, not that I think too many people think like, oh, pain is a lesson. You've got to, everything means something. Well, it doesn't. Like, I would say that anguish and pain aren't something that we should really be celebrating or glorifying or romanticizing. And that's certainly what, let's say, DSPM does. And like, I don't particularly think that every pain is a lesson, because I already knew a lot of the things that it was trying to teach me prior to experiencing it again and again and again. It was an incredibly hard 6 years, but I made it meaningful in my own way, and without wanting to romanticize it. I wanted people to kind of comprehend the trauma that was there, comprehend the pain that I actually went through, but not in a way that made it seem like, oh, I'm so sad, and just, yeah, romanticizing. In that respect, I think it's a bit of a scary record, because it makes me stare it straight in the face again, but in, I want to say, a victorious kind of light. It's the evidence that I overcame what I went through.
Right.
So with that sense of victory, it becomes a very prideful experience going through Trisagion again. Like, I listen to it sometimes because it's quite
good.
Yeah, I think so.
A pretty decent record.
Yeah, pretty decent. It's a very cathartic and affirming record, despite the subject matter. And I think maybe that's why people, I say, want to clasp to it so deeply, and certainly the people I've spoken to, because there is that sense of life affirming this. There is a sense of hope beneath it all, and if that hope didn't exist, I wouldn't still be here. So by the fact that I am still here, it's clearly meaningful, and it was worth writing about. So yeah, there was this huge inspiration and emotion that went into that record, and it's just now the challenge of drawing that from a different pool. So to answer the question of whether it could have existed without that pain, no, it couldn't. No, I'd have made something different perhaps, but it wouldn't be Trisagion. Whether it'd be better or worse, I can't say. But Trisagion would not have existed.
Mm-hmm. So then, if you could just snap your fingers and make Trisagion not exist, but everything that went into it would have been different in a good way, would you do it?
No. I think that there is a hugely meaningful aspect to Trisagion. And though I don't think that the pain was necessarily a lesson, I think how I see it now is a lesson. And that might make no sense out of my own head. But how I've looked upon everything that I have been through and been able to kind of twist it into why there is actually a sense of hope, why there is a reason to keep going. And even if things around you make you inexplicably angry, it's a reason to want to change it, not to deject yourself. I made conscious efforts to change the circumstances I were in. I made conscious efforts to try and change the world around me, and I'm going to continue to do that. And that's kind of what Trisagion represents to me. And if I took that away, I don't know where I'd be now. And I think perhaps the unknown is scarier than the horrible things I've already been through.
Right. So one question that I wanted to ask before when we were talking about what was around 2012, 2014, but then we got into the more serious topics, is
Sure.
after you had already made Absolution Emptiness your masterpiece and named the project Ethereal Shroud, why did you decide to make the serious album with Falling Ash under the same name instead of creating another name?
That's a complex question. First of all, the name Ethereal Shroud was also a joke. I made it in 10 seconds. But I ended up building an affinity for it, so I kept it. But I think the big reason that I ended up going for a serious record after the joke was because I realized that through making that joke record, I could actually create a sound if I wanted to that was more representative of what I wanted to do, that wasn't too far away sonically from what I did in that demo. So I thought, well, it would make kind of no sense to abandon a project where I've built a bit of steam, built an audience, and though the audience is less important than actually having the music exist, it made sense from an enrichment standpoint to get people to listen to it and just tell me what they think. And if I shoot myself in the foot, that's just not going to happen. And I went through the same experience, like logically, when I thought, well, why am I abandoning Ethereal Shroud now? That doesn't make a lot of sense. So that was the big reason. It was wanting, and maybe as well that I wanted to prove to the audience that I could do something a lot better than what I'd already done. Like if I really tried, which I did. But those were the big reasons, I think, that I ended up doing a serious record after the joke one.
Yeah, but the question is more, why under the same name?
I think, again, it was the audience thing. I wanted people to listen to what I was doing. Now that I'd inadvertently built an audience from a genre of music that's not too far removed from what they became the Falling Ash did, I thought, well, I'd be stupid to abandon that.
Right.
Plus, I don't know, my sense of humor is so innately me that abandoning something just because there was a sense of humor behind it would be disingenuous to who I am as a person, because those kind of stupid jokes are also what make me. So,
right.
So on that note, perhaps I don't regret Absolution Emptiness as much as I think. I wouldn't say I regret it. It's just more, I think it sucks. But many bands have made bad records, man.
Yeah, it's about time you make another one.
Yeah, next time, man.
Absolution Emptiness 2?
Let's do it. It'll happen.
So then, right around the time that Trisagion was coming out, you also created a new project, Wisp.
That it was kind of an accident, that one. So for
So I
about
gathered.
apparently, so for about a 2 or 3 week period, I was suffering terrible insomnia,
Mhm.
and I was in such a strange state of mind through that time that in the middle of the Trisagion sessions, I just felt like I wanted to capture that moment. Wisp isn't going to continue, by the way. It doesn't say it on my talent, but like that project's dead. It was just to exist for that little microcosm of time. But I wanted to kind of capture the dreamy unease that insomnia created, and I felt that the only way to do that was by writing and recording something in that moment. So I look back on the song names, I don't remember writing them. I don't really remember recording the whole thing. It's a fascinating little EP that I really like. I listen to it sometimes, and it's just like And I think because I barely remember recording it, it doesn't feel like I made it.
Right.
Because I don't
I
associate it
also
with
barely
creation.
remember listening to it.
The last song, Faint of Heart, I think is one of the best songs I've ever done. It's just got this really kind of beautiful, just these beautiful melodies that all kind of envelop one another. And I think that was the most faithful representation of how I felt during that time. This kind of strongly emotional, but not being able to touch what that emotion is. That was that song.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I won't be continuing Wisp. I just wanted to kind of put something down at that time. Everyone's now rushing to edit Encyclopedia Metallum.
Mm-hmm.
They announced split up.
Well, I mean, so Wisp is about your insomnia,
Yes.
Ethereal Shroud, and all the other ones. You also mentioned that a lot of your sense of humor and your idiosyncrasies are related to your autism, and your trauma with PTSD and so on is
Yeah, I would say that's
also
true.
a very big factor. Okay, so part of me does feel like this is a bit of a bingo.
Hooray for you!
So I have to ask, what's next?
Well, the record musically is more or less finished. Like in terms of the riffs and for the next Ethereal Shroud record. I've also written another record for another project that I've not yet announced. But if you liked Wisp, you'll like it. But I went through a personal loss recently, like a really sincere. Yeah, and I've written a record to commemorate that individual, and it's very much of Solitude and Solemn Part 2, because it's all of those kind of same dreamy, doomy sounds, but just done in a very different way. As for Ethereal Shroud, it's a really difficult. This is going to be a really difficult record for me to actually conceptualize. I think, like musically, it's down, and I love it. I love what I've written, but in terms of the concepts, the ideas, that's just going to take some time. It may be another 6 years for all I fucking know. Or it might be next year. Yeah, I mean, the one thing Ethereal Shroud fans are good at is waiting.
Right. So now that we've touched upon this, and I've also asked you the question, and you said you would do Trisagion all over again, even if it meant keeping, you'd rather have the album than the pain. You're really so great at making the music feel like an empathic experience of the negative thing that you were going through, and being able to put that into art. So we have decided in a very utilitarian way that it's for the benefit of the world to traumatize you further.
Oh, thanks, man. That's what I need. Yeah, clearly. I'll suffer for everyone else. I'll be a martyr just for you. Black metal martyr just for you.
Right. And the first step is remastering Absolution Emptiness.
I'm going to actually probably do it just for the sake of shutting you up.
I'm glad I've been able to make a difference.
Thanks, dude. Like, to be fair, the label were wanting to repress it, and I'm just like, no, please don't do it. And I'm annoyed because it's in the cassette box that recently came out. I was not consulted about this cassette box. The label just did it, and of course, it has Absolution Emptiness in it. Even though I told them, yeah, for the good, that I didn't want to repress that again, but they did it anyway. Thanks, Northern Silence. Woohoo!
Right. So how does it feel getting Richard Spencer on your record?
Getting what? Sorry.
How does it feel getting Richard Spencer on your record?
Man, that was funny. Just the fact that everyone thought for a moment that it was the racist dude in the US. That was the icing on the cake. And my lovely friend Rich, who has the most unfortunate name he could possibly ever have, who, for the record, is like hugely left-wing, anti-fascist, like really genuinely fantastic guy, hugely emotionally empathetic, and having the same name as Richard Spencer.
Right. So now you'll have to hunt down someone else. Maybe you'll hunt down what was Ben Shapiro. Maybe you'll find out somebody else named Ben Shapiro and get them on the record.
I'll put an ad out and say, hey, if anyone is named Ben Shapiro that isn't a cunt, can you just let me know? Let me know, because I really want you on the record. Even if you can't play anything, I want you on my record. And it'll just be an album of alt-right lookalikes. That's how you make a record, apparently.
Right. So I did read a couple of interviews of yours for Sonemic and Sputnik, whatever. all of them have asked you because you were a user of their website, and you're also a Meterstorm user, apparently, even though you barely use it, and I should chastise you for that.
Yeah, sorry, dude.
How was that question phrased? How's the experience of using the website? What is your user experience feedback?
It's been fascinating. I mean, it only goes to show, like, if you're a really big music nerd, you're gonna want to kind of like have an outlet for the kind of records you listen to, discuss the records you listen to, and that's what kind of drew me to those kind of websites. Metal Storm came later, and it was because Ethereal Shroud was already on there, and I thought, why don't I say hi? But it's been fascinating watching people who I grew up as friends now basically become fans of my band. That's a surreal feeling that I'll never quite get over. And I think that it was very emotionally gratifying to see my albums talked about and reviewed in the same way as some of the albums that shaped my life and shaped the, just the way that I consume music.
Right.
It was that kind of realization that, wow, this is it. This is the shit. This is kind of what I've been aspiring for all this time. To create something that resonated in exactly the same way as the records I did when I was growing up. And it's been immensely surreal. When I've been looking at Rate Your Music and it's bolded, it's in the top 20 of the year, like, that's mad. And Metal Storm is it was number one for a long time, and then Bellacore overtook me, which is fine because that record is amazing. But seeing all of that kind of I would say the accolades from the perspective of just this dork, as it were, this music dork, surreal, I would say.
Right. So this is why I had to come along and say that your best album was in 2013.
Yeah, thanks, dude.
So I'm really just so it doesn't get into your head.
I'm glad it has much lower ratings than everything else I've made, because like then it makes me feel like I'm not crazy. It just isn't very good.
I'll go rate it a 10 right now and see if the rating changes.
Thanks, man. It is a masterpiece after all. It's an incredible record. The best DSPM record ever made.
So it has a 7.5 now. Look, it's a 7.9 now. It has exactly the same rating as They Became the Falling Ash, as it should.
I hate you so much. Instead of going back in time and changing anything about Trisagion, I want to go back in time to the point I agreed to this interview and just be like, I'm good.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Can't change that.
Yeah, true.
We're already past the hour mark. I wonder if there's anybody listening to the entire thing.
That would be incredible. Like, I'm not that interesting, really. Like,
yeah, I can tell.
Yeah, thanks. I like your sense of humor. It's good. Though this is when you say, no, I wasn't joking. I think you're a horrible person. There's the nod. There it is.
Well, I'm glad you have similar senses of humor. I
It's
can't
got
imagine.
through things.
I can't imagine like making a joke with someone and they actually get angry.
Yeah.
That hasn't happened to me yet, but something there is a small tingling that tells me someday
it's gonna happen. The next interview, that's gonna be the one where someone's like, "What the fuck did you just say?" Right. And you deserve it.
I know I will. I will bring eternal shame upon Metal Storm someday.
Yeah. Well, can't say I didn't warn you.
Right. Anything else you'd like to add?
Profound thank yous to everyone that's given me any attention and my work any attention. I think that's all I can really say. It's still a surreal experience, just going from the perspective of this dork, this just someone that enthuses about music in the same way as the people that listen to my music, choosing to say that my music is the one that they want to listen to and they really kind of get enrichment out of. That's something that I don't think I've quite come to terms yet. So good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the music.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
All right.